Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so you never miss an episode. Today is all about how to communicate so people actually listen. How many of you feel unheard at work? How many of you feel unheard at home? How many of you feel like you can never get a word in when you're around your friends, or you can't command authority in a team meeting? If any of you have struggled with this episode is for you. After listening to this, you'll be able to better articulate how you feel. You'll be able to actually make an impact when you speak, and you'll know the tools to actually help people listen when you decide to open your mouth. Let me start with something that might feel uncomfortable. Most of us think we're good communicators. We think we're being clear. We think we're being honest. We think we're being direct. But the research says otherwise. A study from Harvard found that people overestimate how clearly they communicate by more than 40%. In other words, we think we're obvious, but other people are confused, defensive, or overwhelmed. Think about it. If we were all great at communicating, we wouldn't have workplace friction. We wouldn't have that argument at home. We wouldn't get triggered when someone says anything. It's the reason why texts get misread, meetings go in circles, arguments repeat themselves, and people leave conversations feeling unheard. Because communication isn't about what you say. It's about what lands. Communication isn't about what you meant. It's about what they heard. Communication isn't about winning the argument. It's about protecting the relationship. Communication isn't about intensity. It's about clarity. And today, I want to talk about how to communicate effectively at work, home, and in life, not with scripts, not with tricks, but with principles grounded in psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior. If you stay with me, this episode will change how people respond to you, how often conflict escalates, and how often you feel misunderstood. And I know what you're thinking, Jay, I hate difficult conversations. I struggle to speak up for myself. Well, you're in the right place. Here's the shift that changes everything. Communication is not self-expression. Communication is shared understanding. Most people communicate from intention. Effective communicators communicate from impact. You might intend to be helpful, but it might land as critical. You might intend to be honest, but it might land as harsh. You might intend to be efficient, but it might land as dismissive. And the gap between intention and impact is where most communication breaks down. So let's close that gap. I'm sure so many of you listening right now are thinking, Jay, I always want people to feel better. I want to make people feel good. I want to share things sensitively, but it doesn't always get received that way. Well, let's start with principle number 1. Regulate before you communicate. Here's something most people don't know. You can't communicate well when your nervous system is dysregulated. Neuroscience shows that when you're stressed, triggered, or defensive, blood flow literally shifts away from the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, empathy, and language, and it moves toward the amygdala, the part responsible for threat and survival. Which means this: when you're activated, you don't communicate, you react. That's why emails sound colder than intended. That's why arguments escalate so fast. That's why you say things and immediately think, I should have said that. Think about this for a moment. When someone says something in a meeting and it triggers you, they stole your idea. They cut you off. They presented something that you know wasn't accurate. They're getting credit. When all of these emotions are running through your mind and you choose to speak, you're more likely to make yourself look worse than you are to make yourself look better. If you don't choose to regulate and you react instead of respond effectively, you actually create more issues for yourself long term and make more people not want to listen to you than when you're able to keep your calm. This isn't about emotional bypassing. I'm not saying to not worry about it. I'm not saying not even to get involved. I'm saying that you want to come from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. Effective communicators do something simple but powerful. They pause, not to avoid the conversation, but to protect the outcome. At work, this looks like not replying immediately to a triggering message, drafting the email, then revising it. At home, this looks like saying, "I need a minute," instead of raising your voice. Remember this: the calmest person in the conversation sets the emotional temperature. Regulation is not weakness, it's leadership. We think if you're quiet or you pause, you sound weak. Actually, the most powerful speakers, whether on a stage or in a meeting, use pause most effectively to draw people in, to get people to lean in, to get people to actually listen. It shows a sense of self-control when people talk at a slower pace, when they have the ability to actually hold back on that emotion. Because guess what? Everyone thought you were about to respond emotionally. And in that moment, if you're able to pull back so that you can actually respond from a place of feeling centered, it's incredible how much impact you can have. Principle 2, clarity beats intensity. Most people think being passionate makes them persuasive. Research shows the opposite. Studies in organizational psychology show that clear, concise communication is perceived as more competent and more trustworthy than emotional intensity. Intensity feels powerful to the speaker. Clarity feels safe to the listener. That's why long explanations often backfire. They feel like pressure. They feel like justification. They feel like emotional flooding. Effective communicators simplify. Instead of, "I just feel like this keeps happening and I don't know if you realize how much it affects me and I've tried to bring it up before," they say, "When this happens, I feel overlooked. I need a heads up next time." Same truth, less noise. Think about that for a second.